Hi everyone, welcome back to the Behind the Scenes series. Today, I'm walking you through this time-lapse build of the Service Desk dashboard. If you'd like to see how the final dashboard works, you can click the link above to explore the full functionality. All the resources are available for download in the description, so you can follow along step by step. Now, let's dive in and start building with a blank Power BI file. We'll begin by bringing in our data from Excel. Select the file, then click Transform Data to enter the Power Query editor. Next, instead of creating a new calendar table, we'll reuse an existing one. Copy the DimDate table from the template and paste it into this file. Repeat again to paste in a second DimDate table. This one will be used specifically for the month selection dropdown. Once done, click Close and Apply to load everything into the model. With the data loaded, let's switch to the model view to establish the relationship between the tables. Drag the creation date field from the data table to create a relationship with the DimDate table. Now, let's move over to the table view for some quick cleanup. Start with the Priority column, click Sort by column, and choose Priority Sort. Repeat this step for the status and time category columns, selecting their respective sort fields, to make sure all visuals in your dashboard display the data in the correct and logical order. Next, create a new column to calculate the satisfactory percentage. Use the DAX formula from the BI template, then format it as a percentage with no decimal places. While we're here, let's also sort the fields in our DimDate tables. In the first DimDate table, sort week by week number. And then sort the year-month column, using the year-month sort field. In the second DimDate table, sort the year-month column as well. Now, let's shift to the report view and start designing the dashboard layout. Go to Canvas Background, choose the background color, and set the transparency to 0 for a solid backdrop. Next, let's organize our DAX measures in a dedicated table. Click Enter Data, name it Measure Table, and click Load. Once it's created, right-click on the measure table and choose New Measure to add the ticket count measure. Then, we can delete the default column 1 from the table as it's not needed. Next, we'll create the rest of the measures required for this dashboard. I'll fast forward through this part to keep the video moving, but you can find all the DAX formulas in the downloadable BI template. With the measures in place, let's move on to adding the dashboard title. Go to the Insert ribbon, choose Shapes and select a rectangle. Close both the Filter and Data pane. Under the Size and Style, resize the shape, and position it where you want the title background. After that, adjust the fill color to lighter pink to match the theme. And turn off the border. Then, from the Home ribbon, insert a text box. Set the font size to 28 and type Service Desk Dashboard. Center the text within the box. Adjust the text box size and position as needed. Then remove the background for a clean, polished look. Next, let's add a slicer for users to select the month they want to review. Expand the Build pane, insert a slicer, and add the year-month field to the data. Rename it for clarity. Now, we'll format the slicer, resize and place it in the top right corner of the canvas. Remove the background to keep it minimal. In the slicer settings, change the style to drop-down and enable single select. Finally, update the header font size to 9 and change the value's background color to white for better contrast. Next, we'll proceed to work on the cards. We'll start by adding the colored shapes that sit behind the cards for visual framing. Under the Insert ribbon, go to Shapes and choose the Rounded tab, top right. Format the shape to the appropriate size and position it to where the first card will be placed. Then, reduce the rounded corner to 20. Adjust the fill color to match the theme. Increase the transparency and turn off the border. Once that's done, rotate the shape by 270 degrees to position the rounded edge at the top left. Now, duplicate this shape for the second card. Move it into position. And update the fill color to differentiate it from the first. Then, duplicate the shape again for the third card. Reposition it. And change its fill color as well to complete the background for all three cards. Next, we'll add a text above each card to label the comparison to the prior month. Insert a text box, set the font size to 9 and type versus prior month. Highlight the text, change the font color, and align it to the right. After that, adjust its size and position the text box above the first card background shape. To fine-tune the layout, update the padding by setting the left to 0 and right to 9. And turn off the background. Now, duplicate this text box and move it into position above the second card. Then duplicate it once more and place it above the third card to complete the labels. With the background and labels done, we'll move on to creating the actual cards. Insert a new card visual and add Select Month High to the data field. Rename it to High. Then, adjust the size and position of the card to sit nicely within the background shape. To clean up the visual, set the top padding to 0 and turn off the background. Under the callout values, reduce the font size to 34, change the color to white, and align it to center. Then, for the label, set the font size to 14, update the color to white as well, and increase the space between label and value to 16. Finally, change the vertical alignment to top. To enrich the card with more context, we'll use the reference labels to show the month-on-month variance. Add Select Month-on-Month High to the Reference Labels section and change the series to All. Then, disable the title. And under Value, set the font size to 14 and apply the color that fits the card theme. Adjust the divider by setting its transparency to 100 and turning off the background. Next, modify the layout by setting the horizontal alignment to right and the vertical alignment to bottom. In the spacing setting, set the space between labels to 0 and activate Customize Outer Padding. Also set both the padding before and after the divider line to 0. Then go into the card's padding settings. Switch to Custom. And set the top to 2. Left and right to 5, and bottom to 14. Also, disable both the card background and border to complete the minimalist look. Now that the first card is done, let's duplicate it to keep the layout consistent. Replace the data field with Select Month Medium and rename it to Medium. Adjust the card's position so it aligns neatly next to the first. In the Reference Labels section, select the Medium series and add Select Month-on-Month Medium to show the variance. Repeat the same steps one more time. Duplicate the card. Replace the data field with Select Month Low and rename the field to Low. Then, reposition this third card accordingly. Finally, update the reference labels for the third card to add Select Month-on-Month Low, which will display the variance for low priority tickets. Now that our key metric cards are set up, let's test them out by selecting December 2025 from the period dropdown at the top. You'll see the cards update instantly to reflect the numbers for that month. Next, let's add the Team Analytics visual. Insert a stacked column chart. Then, assign team to the x-axis, ticket count to the y-axis, and status to the legend. To enrich the tooltip with more context, add total ticket count so users can quickly see the full volume of tickets handled by each team. Once that's set up, take a moment to carefully adjust the chart's size and position it neatly within the dashboard layout. And remove the background for a cleaner presentation. Then, update the title to support ticket workload by team and set the font size to 12. Also, reduce the space between label and value to 0 to tighten the look. To improve readability, update the X-axis font size to 8 and turn off the title, since the team names are self-explanatory. For the Y-axis, disable both the value and title to reduce visual clutter. Then go to the legend, reduce the text size to 8, and turn off the legend title. Now, let's update the column colors to create a more intuitive visual. Set the open status to orange, in progress status to red, resolved status to green, and closed to blue, with a transparency level of 20 for a softer tone. To help structure the dashboard layout, we'll now add to divider lines. Head over to the Insert ribbon, click on Shapes, and choose the Line option. Once the line appears, adjust its size and position to divide the sections neatly. Next, we'll fine-tune its appearance. Turn off the fill to keep it clean. Change the border color to a neutral gray. And increase the transparency to 46% so it blends nicely into the background without being too distracting. Then, rotate the line by 90 degrees to make it vertical. After that, duplicate this shape for the second line. And reposition it. Next, we'll build the monthly trend chart to track the ticket activity over time. Insert a line chart and add year-month to X-axis. Then bring in both select 12-month ticket and ticket count to Y-axis. Rename the fields for clarity. Close the Build pane, then switch to the Format pane to adjust the chart's size and position for better alignment within the dashboard. Remove the background to keep the visual clean. Now, update the chart title to 12-month ticket activity and set the font size to 12. For the X-axis, turn off both the values and axis title to create a cleaner look and reduce visual clutter at the bottom of the chart. Do the same for the Y-axis. Disabling its values and title helps keep the focus on the chart data, not the labels. For the legend, turn off the title as well. In the lines setting, change the interpolation type to smooth, so the trend appears clearer and easier to follow. Then, we'll customize the line colors. For the Select 12-month ticket line, choose a dark red shade to represent the overall trend across the year. For comparison, set the selected month line to orange so it contrasts well against the red. Also, to help highlight the monthly activity, turn on the shade area and set its transparency to 95 for subtle emphasis. Next, enable markers for both series. For select 12-month ticket, turn on the marker and reduce its shape size to 4. For selected month, enable the marker. Activate the border. And update the color to gray for contrast. Then, to display the values for the selected month, start by turning on data labels. Since we don't need to label every data point, select the Select 12-month ticket series and turn off its data labels. This helps keep the chart clean and focused. Now, click on the selected month series to customize its label appearance. Set the label position to under. Enable the series title. Adjust the font size to 8. And apply a gray font color for a subtle, professional look. Also format the value by increasing the font size to 12, setting it to bold, and using gray again for consistency. Finally, under the layout setting, choose multi-line to ensure the label text wraps cleanly. The line chart is almost done. Let's now work on creating a custom tooltip. Begin by adding a new page and rename it to Tooltips. For clarity, go ahead and rename page 1 to Dashboard as well. Now that we have renamed the tabs, we can move on to set up the tooltip. Start by inserting a new card visual and adding the year-month field into the data field. After that, adjust the size of the card and then move it into position where you'd like it to appear within the tooltip area. For the padding, set the top, left, and bottom to 0. And turn off the background. Then, format the callout value by updating the font size to 12. Under the label settings, reduce the space between label and value to 0. Disable the label altogether. And set the vertical alignment to top. Following this, we'll move on to the card's formatting section to set the padding to custom. And adjust the top and bottom padding to 0, with left padding set to 5. Also turn off both the background and the border. We are done with this first card. Now, insert another card visual to show the ticket count. Add Select 12-month ticket to the data field and rename it to Ticket Count. Once completed, we'll adjust the card size. And then position it to fit neatly below the first card. Also, disable the background. Under Callout Values, set the font size to 13. Continuing on, for the label, update the font size to 11. Set the position to below value. Reduce the spacing between label and value to 0. And set the vertical alignment to top. After we are done with formatting the callout value, we'll move on to the card format. For the card padding settings, switch to Custom and adjust the top padding to 1, left padding to 12, and bottom padding to 0. Disable both the background and the border here as well. Lastly, enable the accent bar, set its color to match the line chart color, and increase the width to 4 for better visibility. With both cards formatted, return to the canvas setting. Change the canvas type to custom and resize the page accordingly. Then go to Page Information and set the page type to Tooltip. Once the custom tooltip page is ready, we can link it to the line chart. Select the line chart on the dashboard page, navigate to Properties pane, and under the Tooltip settings, select the Tooltips page. Now that the tooltip is configured, let's move on to building the heat map for ticket load distribution. Insert a matrix table and add week to the rows, time category to the columns, and ticket count 2 to the values. With that done, adjust the matrix size and position to fit the layout. Then, reduce the top padding to 0. And disable the background for a minimalist look. Next, we'll enable the visual title. And type in Ticket Load Distribution. Also, set the font size to 12. For the spacing, increase the space between the title label and the value to 8. Once completed, we will go to the Layout and Style presets, choose None to start with a clean style. And in the grid settings, set the row padding to 3 and adjust the global font size to 8. Then update the column headers by centering both the header and the title, and disable the auto size width. To keep the visual clean and compact, disable the row subtotals. Now, let's apply the heat map effect. Expand the Cell Elements section and turn on the background color. Click on FX and set the lowest value to white and highest value to green to reflect ticket volume intensity. To complement the heat map, enable data bars to visually highlight total ticket volume. In the FX setting, apply the formatting to totals only and define the minimum as 0 and the maximum as 100. Change the positive bar color to green to keep it consistent with the heat map palette. Finally, take a moment to manually adjust the column widths so that all elements align neatly across the matrix layout. Next, we'll bring in the satisfactory score for the selected month. Begin by clicking on a blank area of the canvas. Then, go to the Insert tab. Choose Shapes. And select the speech bubble. Once inserted, adjust the size of the shape and carefully position it within the layout to fit the design. Under Shape Style, set the rounded corners to 4 and chat bubble height to 13. Then, change the fill color to dark blue. Update the border setting by changing the shape border color to white, and increasing the border width to 2 for better visibility. Once the speech bubble is styled and in place, Open the build pane to insert a new card visual on top of it and bring in the field selected month score. To display the satisfaction score clearly within the shape, resize the card and reposition it so it sits neatly inside the speech bubble. Disable the background too. Then, enable the title. And type in satisfactory score. Format the title by setting the font size to 12, changing the text color to light gray, and aligning it to center. Moving on, format the callout values. Update its font size to 30. Change the value color to white. And align it to center as well. Within the label settings, start by reducing the space between the label and the value to 0, and then turn the label off entirely for a tighter visual alignment. From here, navigate to the card's padding, switch it to custom to remove the top padding completely, and increase the bottom padding to 12. Also, be sure to turn off both the background and the border to maintain a seamless, integrated look within the speech bubble. Now that the satisfactory score bubble is in place, let's work on the Service Level Agreement SLA section. Insert a new card and add the field SLA First Response % to the data field. Delete the default measure name and rename it to Achieved, so it clearly communicates the purpose of the card. Carefully resize the card and position it in the allocated area within the layout. Adjust both the top and bottom padding to 0, and disable the background. Next, we'll refine the appearance. For the callout values, reduce the font size to 24, choose a dark blue color for strong visibility, and align the value to the center. Then move to the label settings, set the font size to 10, adjust the color to complement the design, and place the label below the value for better visual flow. Also, reduce the spacing to 0 to tighten up the layout. After that, head to the card setting to switch the padding option from normal to custom, and once again, set both the top and bottom paddings to 0 for a compact appearance. Be sure to turn off both the background and border here as well. Once this card is fully formatted, go ahead and duplicate it to create the second card. In the duplicated card, replace the data field with SLA Resolution % and rename the label to Achieved once more to reflect its corresponding KPI. Then, carefully reposition this second card to the lower right corner of the layout. With the SLA cards ready, navigate to the Build pane and insert the first donut chart. In the data field, add ticket count to values and first response SLA to details to define the segments. Next, resize the chart proportionally and position it directly above the corresponding SLA card. And turn off the background. In the Format pane, update the title to SLA First Response, set the font size to 12, and align it to the center. Then, to reduce visual noise, disable the legend. Now, let's refine the slice colors. Use orange to represent achieved SLA, and gray for failed SLA. Also, adjust the inner radius to 72 to fit the card. Finally, turn off the detail labels to simplify the chart further. Once this donut chart is complete, go ahead and duplicate it to create the second chart for the resolution SLA. This time, replace the data field with resolution SLA. Navigate to the filter pane and apply a filter that excludes any blank values from this chart. After applying the filter, adjust the position of the chart so it fits well within the allocated area of the layout. Now, update the chart title to SLA Resolution. Keep the styling consistent by continuing with the same color scheme, where we use orange for achieved SLA and gray for failed SLA. With both SLA visuals complete, let's shift our focus to the detailed ticket log. Start by inserting a new table visual onto the canvas and add the field ticket ID. Since Power BI automatically summarizes this field as a count, update it to Don't Summarize so each row shows a unique ticket. Next, begin editing the remaining fields, starting with Priority to indicate the urgency of each request. and add category to classify the nature of the ticket. Followed by source, which shows how the request was submitted. Then bring in status to reflect the current state of the ticket, and team to identify the assigned support group. Lastly, in this group, add agent name so you can see who handled each case. Now, include creation date and time. Power BI will default this to a date hierarchy. Switch it to the actual date field to accurately display the timestamp of each ticket. Do the same for first response date and time, making sure to change from hierarchy to show complete date and time values. Add first response SLA next, followed by resolution date and time. And once again adjust it from the default date hierarchy to the actual date and time values. Continue by adding resolution SLA. And finally, include the field satisfactory percentage. Power BI may set this to sum by default, switch it to don't summarize so each ticket's score is displayed individually. With the fields in place, let's rename a few for clarity. Start by renaming ticket ID to simply ID for a cleaner, more compact label. Next, update creation date and time to creation date only, to keep the column header short, as the full timestamp is already shown in the values. For first response date and time, simplify the name to first response. Right beside it, change first response SLA to just SLA, as its position makes the reference obvious. Continue by renaming resolution date and time to resolution, and for the adjacent resolution SLA, apply the same convention and rename it to SLA as well. At this stage, the table should clearly show all ticket details, with well-labeled columns and each row representing a single support ticket. Let's now apply a filter to focus the table on the selected reporting period. Add selected range as a filter, and set the condition to include only values that contain selected month. This ensures that the log dynamically updates to show only the records relevant to the period selected by the user. With the data now filtered, let's refine the layout. Resize the table to fit neatly within the layout, and reposition it to align with the surrounding visuals. Then, set the top padding to 0 to reduce extra spacing, and turn off the background for a cleaner appearance. After that, enable the table's title. Name it Detailed Ticket Log, and set the font size to 12. Following that, go into the grid settings and update the border color to gray to match the dashboard theme. Continuing on, under the Values settings, set the font size to 8 and match the background color to the rest of the dashboard for a consistent look. Then apply a soft orange highlight to alternate rows. Now, move over to the column header settings. Reduce the font size to 9. Apply a light green fill to align with the visual design. And disable auto size width so you can manually fine-tune the spacing. Next, in the Totals section, turn off the total values. Finally, spend a moment adjusting the column widths manually. This ensures each column fits its content and keeps the table clean and well organized. Now that the table is fully styled, let's shift our attention to enhancing the card interactivity. Insert a button slicer, and bring in the priority field. To integrate the slicer smoothly into the layout, resize it to span across the 3 cards, and reposition it to sit neatly above the cards in the layout. Then, turn off the background, and to keep the look clean and minimal, disable the title as well. Return to set the top padding to 0 for better alignment. In the layout settings, increase the space between buttons to 26 so they fit seamlessly above each card. Under the Callout Values section, set the font size to 14. Change the font color to white so that the text stands out against the background, and align the text to the center for a balanced look. Continue by customizing the interactive states of the buttons. In the hover state, change the font color to gray, creating a subtle visual cue when users hover over each button. For the selected state, change the font color to black to clearly highlight which priority is active. Next, head to the button settings, change the padding size from normal to custom, and remove the top padding entirely. Also switch off the border and fill so the buttons merge naturally with the background. To complete this section, we'll tidy up the card visuals. Click on the first card, go into the callout value settings, and increase the label transparency to 100%. Repeat this process for each of the individual cards, so that the default data labels, which would otherwise overlap with the newly added button slicer, are hidden for a cleaner, more polished appearance. With all the visuals now in place, we'll configure the chart's interactions to make the dashboard more dynamic. Start by selecting the bar chart, then go to the Format ribbon and click Edit Interactions to activate Interaction Editing Mode. Proceed to set its interaction mode to filter for both the pie charts. Next, click on the top pie chart and set its interaction mode to filter for both the bottom pie chart and the bar chart. Then do the same for the bottom pie chart. Set it to filter for the top pie chart and the bar chart as well. Once all the chart interactions are configured, click Edit Interaction again to exit the editing mode and finalize the settings. And with that, we've completed the step-by-step guide for building the Service Desk dashboard from scratch. If you're looking for more dashboard tips and templates, be sure to check out my earlier videos. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.